Hello, Agriculture in a Nutshell listeners. As you may very well know, my name is Dillon Brush. I'm the grandson of Bill Brush, our resident soil expert here on this podcast. And in today's episode, it's going to be like a little short episode or a shorter episode than normal. And it's just going to be me talking, actually. Bill is not here right now. I figured I'd throw in a little bonus episode, kind of discussing some of the behind the scenes stuff and giving you guys a little bit more information about myself, seeing as I don't think I have done that before. So without further ado, let's get into it. So like I said, I'm the grandson of Bill Brush, which I'm actually the oldest grandson, or just the oldest grandchild, as a matter of fact, in our family. I've been around ag pretty much my entire life in one way or another, whether I've directly been involved or indirectly been involved. I've always been around ag, specifically nut farming, tree nut farming, like almonds, walnuts, and then more recently pecans is what we've been experimenting with. So to kind of get into some of my earlier ag memories, I remember distinctly when I was a little boy, the house that I spent the majority of my childhood in was right across the way from an alfalfa field. And I remember when I was little, like probably kindergarten age, if not younger than that, but we'll say kindergarten age because I think that's the first time I actually remembering it. But there would be in that alfalfa field a yellow crop duster that would fly like 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning across the field, spraying it with whatever fertilizers or whatever spray was being dropped from the crop duster. And I used to think that was so cool, and that was the most interesting thing in the world. Like, oh, this guy is in a plane flying over a field dropping like fertilizer on this crop that's gonna grow, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So I remember I'd be sleeping in bed before kindergarten and then hear this plane getting really close to the ground right over the top of my house, and waking up and opening the curtains on my window and looking outside and like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then we'd go out and sit on the porch and watch the plane make its passes back and forth, and then all of a sudden it would take off in one direction and disappear for like 15-20 minutes, whatever, and refuel its tanks, and then come back, and it would do it a few more times, and we'd watch it, and then eventually it'd have to get ready to go to school. But I was much more captivated by the cool airplane that was flying over my house. And man, they did that for years. Eventually, I think they moved away from crop dusting, but I remember distinctly that was a staple in my youngest of agriculture memories, which is funny enough not related to anything that the Brush family or my family or anything like that was doing at that time anyways. It was just so happened that where I lived across the street, that was going on. So I thought that was a cool little, like, one of my first core memories of ag-related activities going on in my life, alongside very closely followed by the memories of me going with my dad during harvest. We would go down to like my great-grandparents' house, and at my great-grandparents' house there's a 40-acre plot of walnuts that are, I think, they have to be older than I am, and super pretty trees, very big walnut trees. Not really, a lot of the walnut trees that we have outside of those are kind of squatty, shorter, and I call them, they're more bush-like, but they're dense and they produce a lot of nuts. These trees are much larger. They kind of almost remind me a little bit more of like a fully grown pecan tree in the way that they look, but fact of the matter is they're very pretty trees is what I'm getting at. And then behind that, there's an almond orchard, and it's basically like they're next to one another down at my great-grandparents' house. And so when I was little, same age, like kindergarten, give or take a couple years, whatever, I would go down with my dad during harvest. Usually, I wouldn't say it was necessarily usually in the morning, but it just like throughout the day, whenever I probably just whenever I wasn't in school. And we would get into the jackrabbit, and I'd sit on his lap, and he'd go and find the pickup machine that was going down the walnut rows, picking up walnuts, and we would reverse up behind it, and it would drop the walnuts that it picked up into the jackrabbit. Jackrabbit was my favorite tractor, or it wasn't my favorite tractor, I wouldn't say, but it was definitely my favorite like thing to go and ride in because it was super fast, or what I thought was super fast, compared to like some of the other tractors that we had been using or have used. And so basically, we would just reverse up to the pickup machine. It would drop its walnuts into the jackrabbit, and then my favorite part, which is coming up, we drive back to like the conveyor belt where we dumped off the nuts that we'd picked up from the pickup machine into the conveyor belt for it to be then conveyor belted up into a semi truck with the trailer on it where all the nuts got deposited. But my favorite part was that my dad, he would pull up next to the conveyor belt, and then he would, within the jackrabbit, start the dumping all the walnuts. He would shake it back and forth like the big, I don't know how you'd even describe it. It's like it's like a dump truck, like the bed of the jackrabbit basically. Turn up on its side, dump all the nuts out, and then what I was in charge of doing was he would go up and hop into the semi truck. If the section of the trailer that the semi truck was pulling started to get full, he would pull it forward just a little bit. And so while he was doing that, I was in charge of turning on and off the conveyor belt. And there's a few buttons on there that I always loved pressing because it had like little icons on it or like little designs on it that told you basically what the buttons were going to do. Like one would start and stop the conveyor belt, one would start the like sorting part of the conveyor belt to where it like knocks the sticks out and all the other debris that are not nuts basically before it gets into the truck. And I just remember that being like the coolest thing in the world, that look at me, I'm this little 5-6-year-old whatever, but I'm taking part in the harvesting of these nuts and stuff like that. And so I absolutely love doing that. And we would do that a few times. It wasn't like an all day ordeal or anything like that. It was just like he'd take me up and down a few rows and we'd dump off a few loads of walnuts into the truck, and then I'd be on my way, and then I'd see him when he got back home later that night. But I think out of all the ag memories that I have, that one would probably be, or because it's happened more, like I did that more than once in my life. I'd say that one is probably the most substantial, I would say, or the most core memory of them all, followed by the crop duster, because I thought the crop duster was cool because it's a plane, and how often do planes fly super low to your house and you could like actually see the pilot in the cockpit of the plane, and not to mention they're like literally actually dropping things like stuff out of the airplane onto the ground. Super cool. But yeah, as far as core memories go with ag, those are like the two ones that I can think of right off the top of my head that I always go back to whenever I think of like my upbringing and my ag roots, so to speak, pun intended, I guess. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me and my relation to ag. As far as my involvement in ag right now, I don't necessarily actively participate in ag. Like I'm not an active participant in our farming operation these days. I've kind of chosen to go a different path a little bit, but I'm never one to close a door, so to speak. So very well could end up being in ag later down the line, but as of right now, that's not the path necessarily that I'm set to go on. But like I said, who knows what the future entails? I could find myself full circling back to being involved in ag one way or another, but maybe not necessarily directly farming per se, but maybe more in like a managerial role or like more of like a business role per se, because that is what I am going to school for. I'm going to school for business administration, and then I will be going into marketing at some point after that. And then from there, I planned on using that information and that knowledge to work in the real estate industry. So And the real estate industry is super broad, which is where I'm alluding to the whole, maybe I come full circle in ag and have something to do with real estate and ag, or like lease management or something like that. So I'm casting as wide a net as I can cast in regards to what is available for me in terms of opportunities. And ag has definitely not been ruled out as a possibility. So, like I said, as far as my ag involvement today goes, it's basically, it centers all around the podcast that we being my grandpa and I, Bill, have been producing for you guys. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying. I've been enjoying recording with him, and I'm sure he's told me that he's very much so enjoyed recording these episodes, and stay tuned for many, many more to come in the future, because we're working on all kinds of new stuff that's hopefully, knock on wood, fairly close to coming to fruition. Like I said, this episode's supposed to be like a little brief snippet, kind of a little background on myself, and maybe even a behind the scenes type of episode is a good way to describe it. And so now that we've gotten talking about me out of the way, I would like to go into talking a little bit about like what our plans for the near future, I guess you could say, for our podcast is. So in a nutshell, we plan on moving to a video format, and this video format is going to be it's going to be much easier to explain some of the topics that Bill's talking about, because we'll have access to like a whiteboard where he can actually write out some of the equations that he's talking about, some of the numbers side of things, get a better visual for what he's kind of trying to explain. We're also looking at having on more guests, or just guests in general. So people like my dad, his name's Eric Brush. He is a farmer, and so we would have him and his input, and he farms, just like I was saying, almonds, walnuts, pecans, all that kind of stuff. And so he's very involved in everything that our farm has in terms of its operations and management and all that kind of stuff. So we would love to have him on, and all kinds of other people. That's just right off the top of my head. That's who I immediately think of, because he's my father. So, but we're going to have more than just guests within our own family in the future, and in video format, so that you guys can actually put a face to the name, and it's not just a anonymous voice basically speaking through some waveforms set on the screen. So that's our plan for the hopefully near future, is to, like I said, get video going so that we can move along, and especially with the garden series. I know that Bill really wants to go deep into the garden series, and he really likes the idea of being able to record that with video. And so we might also get into kind of more of, we'll have podcast episodes where we have guests, or like kind of an interview format, like back and forth. And then we'll also have some gardening videos where it's like we're actually out in the field or wherever we'll be, and recording video content in more of like a educational sense rather than a podcast type of style. So we'll mix in some of that kind of content as well. And then also, when doing all of this, and in doing what we've already done, which is just strictly basically audio podcasts, you guys be sure to let us know if you like what you're seeing, or if you have any suggestions, or if you would like to see something that we're not showing you guys or talking about or whatever. Be sure to leave a comment and let us know, and we'll see if we can make it work. But yeah, going back to talking a little bit about me and my responsibilities, I'm I guess you could call me the producer of the podcast. So I'm the one who's behind the scenes doing all the editing and the audio design and the logo designs and all this kind of stuff. So that falls all under me. So if you guys have any questions or any like suggestions or anything like that, just let me know in the comment section below, and like I said, I'll be happy to see what I can do to kind of implement some of that stuff. But hopefully you like this little, ended up being a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I guess this quote unquote shorter episode of kind of a behind the scenes. Leave a comment and let us know if you'd like to see some more of this kind of behind the scenes stuff. We can talk about future plans. We can talk about more stories about like personal ag stuff that I've been involved in, whatever. Just if you like this kind of an episode where it's a little off topic, let us know in the comments below. And always stay tuned for more Agriculture in a Nutshell episodes, because we're going to be trying to upload more often, or more consistently, not more often, just more consistently and with videos. So until next time, stay curious.